Hey everyone, it's Anil from Live, Breathe, Believe. Today is incredibly special. I'm very excited. I have my very first guest, Indira Kennedy, who's joining me. Well, Indira, welcome.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this too.
Likewise, we've been chatting for a few weeks now,
Mm.
and we've been wanting to do something together. Some of our deep conversations around conscious leadership and growth, inner growth, and I'm so pleased that we can make this work and share your collective knowledge with some of mine with my listeners. And so I'm really excited about where this is going to go today.
Great. So am I. So am I. You can just take me on the journey, Anil.
You got it. So for everyone that's listening, this is a first. So we're going to try to keep this as raw and as fluid as we can. So if there are any edits, well, you'll probably know, but if not, hey, just go with it. Go with this on this journey. So Indira, hey, just to get us started, maybe just tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I guess the most important thing is I'm a proud Australian, and you can probably hear that in my accent. So we'll clear that one up straight away. I've been on a journey into what I would call conscious leadership, and that's the name of my business, obviously, for many, many years, and really seriously for 30 years. It is 30 years this month, actually.
Wow.
And so, I have a pinpointed date in when I actually committed to a deep spiritual journey, if you like, but it was for myself and the quality of life I wanted for me and my daughters, who were only little at the time. But much earlier than that, my whole life really has been one of being aware that there is something more than just this physical realm. And I come from a pretty interesting set of parents in many ways, and I love them for it, because they really expanded my sense of what is and what can be. My dad, I remember I was only 6 or 7 when my dad got a telescope out and showed me the moon and the stars in more detail. And somehow that shifted my perception in that moment of looking through a telescope at something and magnifying it to see how much more there is if you really look. And he still is, like, at 60 years of age, he became a Reiki, just because he could. And he's an accountant, and my mum is incredibly intuitive. She was constantly, when I was a kid, looking at the front cover of a newspaper, the local country newspaper where I grew up in Australia, saying, "Oh, that just broke my dream." And she dreamt what was on the front page of the newspaper that day. Or we'd get home and she'd not even have opened the door, and she'd say, "Oh, I think someone's been." And in that moment, I would be kind of feeling what she was feeling. How does she know someone's been? And then I would feel what the energy was like and think, "Oh, I can feel there's a presence of someone's been here." So I had this, and my grandfather, Dad's dad, he loved magic. He was always teaching me, doing magic tricks with me. So, or talking about UFOs, it was really quite, when I think back, it really would stretch people in so many ways. But that was all very normal for me. So the idea of going on to a journey that would take me beyond what is just here and trust all those more intuitive feelings and awarenesses, the images I would get, the knowings I would get, to sort of say, that's actually all part of me and it's all as real as anything else.
I find it quite interesting, even like when you mentioned about kind of the energy around you and looking through a telescope at the age of 6 at the universe outside of you, but all of this has led you to kind of, hey, but almost looking within you to understand, how you're feeling and how the things around you influence how you feel.
Yeah.
And how you're almost kind of your energy is kind of mixing with your surroundings, from
Yeah.
inside and outside.
Another example is, growing up in the country, and I was not a loner as such, but I've always loved my own company. I loved to just sit and play the guitar, or I would paint but I'd love to be out on my bike and go out into a paddock, you know, we would call it a field, and just lie there and look at the sky and the clouds. But also, because I was in those sort of very open spaces, it was very easy to feel the atmosphere and the environment. So I learnt when it was about to rain, even if it was a blue sky. And when I moved to Melbourne for university, and ultimately I married, and I remember saying to my husband one time, "Oh, it's going to rain today." And he said, "You've got to be kidding. It's bright, sunny, blue skies." I said, "No, I can feel it. I can even smell it. It's going to rain today. I'm taking a raincoat with me." And it did. Later in the day, the weather suddenly changed and we had rain. And he said to me, how did you know that?" But I realized that was what growing up in the country with nature and being so close to it, and going into forests that had ancient indigenous tribal culture inherent in that forest, and feeling the energy of those places, just incredible. So when we talk conscious leadership, but you know, so much of this has come from that rich inner life that I've been able to live and develop and become a bigger part of consciously,
Yeah.
to then learn how to use all that to make life work in a much richer way as well.
So on that, so, you know, what you just described, your childhood, your parents growing up in open space, it's almost that the energy, right?
Yeah.
Almost, some people might call that a bit hokey, irrational, but yet you're finding a way with your husband to almost connect that to being rational. I'm kind of curious, maybe share a little bit more about that journey from kind of how you were able to link your ideas to a bit more of a rational plane, and getting others to join you on that journey of understanding how not everything can be explained. There's a certain sense, a certain feeling, and how you were able to maybe start walking down that path of defining conscious leadership to others.
Actually, it's interesting because I was just having a conversation with a woman in America last night about this, around, and it was around business and women, and she's taking a similar path in many ways. And what she was saying was that, you know, ultimately women want a deep connection, but what they think is missing is confidence and knowing how to sort of drive their own lives. So we all tend to look at what are the external symptoms that say, "Oh, I want life to be better," or something's missing. You know, we were talking about, for me, it's about this deep longing that it's like an inner part of me starts asking for something else and for more, and I start to feel lonely, or that something's truly not there, that somehow intuitively I know could be or should be there. And we think that it's essentially lack of confidence or something like that. But the answer from my perspective is that I'm thinking, as you ask me that question, well, really, I just learnt that when I followed those insights and those very strong energetic impulses from within me, I was right. It was right. And if I second guessed it, I'd get confused. And I even know, I'm very good at reading people, and I'd say, "How are you?" And they'd say, "Oh, you know, it's all fine." And I'd be thinking, "No, it's not." And I'd almost know what was wrong with them. And when I was very young, I absolutely trusted that. And then as I grew into adulthood, and I suppose, you know, our world tends to tell us all of that is wrong. You've got to trust the logic and the rational side of the brain. And I have to say I'm highly analytic and very strategic. So I've got a very good balance of the left and right brain. But I started to doubt, because people would sort of create these stories, I suppose, as cover-ups. And then later on, I'd discover I was absolutely right in that moment. I knew what was going on there, or I knew they were lying, or I knew they were covering something up, or I knew they just weren't aware enough of themselves. And I think that's brought a lot of skill into coaching, because I can read behind the words. I can read behind what the persona is that I'm being given, and help someone break through that. And I have to do that for myself. So I think the connection for me really was that over time I learned that this is a really strong, reliable skill. And it makes me happier when I follow it. It works out for me when I follow it. If I get too much into trying to, who's doing this and what works over that, and I will do all that, scan the world and go, okay, so what can I learn from others? But ultimately, I have to come back to truly trusting myself. And that is conscious leadership, actually.
So, I mean, trusting yourself is absolutely, it's incredibly important. And I think from what you've mentioned, your journey over the last 30 years, it's kind of happened year to year progressively, how you build on what you learned and what you felt in your childhood, what you experienced as you started working with others, speaking to others. Obviously, this is not your first interview. But when one of the things I read on your site, which I thought was incredibly powerful and I can relate to, is your greatest actions will come from a still mind and a wise heart. And I think that leadership for me, absolutely one avenue of it stems from the heart. But I think that the whole conscious aspect of it is having a still mind. Because if you don't have a still mind, you're not really in tuned or attuned to yourself. You're not going to listen to your heart. You're going to have a conflict between maybe your mind and your heart, and you're not going to be as effective as a leader. So maybe if you can share from your perspective, how do you deliver those amazing actions? How do you have a still mind and a wise heart?
Well, that was really what led me into the practices that I do to do that, and happy to talk about that as well. And I know that you and I have talked about these things in the past in terms of, well, what do I do on a daily basis to ensure that? I'm just thinking, that journey was really to move even deeper and beyond all of that more intuitive work into realizing that there's something even beyond that. And that really arose out of, I was only in my early 30s and decided to leave my marriage. And it wasn't working out. I was really unhappy. I could see my husband was really unhappy, even though he denied that. And I thought, this is not going to be good for any of us. It's better that we separate. Which meant that I was then going to be raising two really little girls just in primary school and doing it on my own in my early 30s. And I needed to be sure that I could do that. And I also didn't see why our quality of life should suffer just because we had decided, to divorce. So I realized at the time the only thing that was going to get me through, and it related back to other things that happened in the past in my life, was that I needed to get into meditation. Mm. Because if I was going to manage and be a good mother and be able to provide to the level I wanted to and continue and in fact improve on our quality of life, because at that point it wasn't good enough based on the relationship, then I needed to do something that was going to allow me to be that resilient, but also just continue to grow and be me, not lose me as a result of that. And the kind of person that I wanted to be and the kind of mother I wanted to be. So that was when I took up the practice of yoga, and that's been 30 years. That was the turning point for me. It took me into the heart, and it taught me to still my mind. Whereas in the past, I'd used creative visualization, deep relaxation. I did Tai Chi, yoga. I already did a bit of Hatha yoga. I danced. I was used to being in those states where it was more of a natural healing. I chose that if I wasn't well or started to feel a bit run down, and I had a very big challenge at one point with family problems. And that was when I thought, well, I'm not going to end up taking drugs or as in medication to calm myself, but to do it in a natural way, that I was sure that my body could heal itself if I just did the right thing. So that was get still, get quiet, let myself see how to keep the mind in the right place, not let my mind weaken or go down the wrong path, allow my body to rest and rejuvenate. So I would, and plus as a dancer, going through college and doing a degree in dance and drama and psychology as well, a bit of film and TV, I was used to being in those states in order to create a choreography or to be inspired and visualize something. Very used to going to sleep at night and suddenly there's this whole dance appearing in my head and waking up that way. So it wasn't so unusual for me to know that that was a way to go. So as I said, when I was in a really challenging situation and I could see I was in danger of being really influenced by the external world and all that it meant, and would I have enough money, and could I get up, get the kids to childcare and get to work and get home and feed them and have them do their homework and then have some time for me, was how do I do that and continue to grow, just continue to develop that. That's very high value for me. And I wanted to model that for my girls. This was my moment when I decided this is how I show up now is going to teach my daughters how to be as women.
Because the as a single mom, with everything that you're doing professionally and personally, to raise your daughters, to give them the right direction, the right guidance, you clearly need to look after yourself. And, you know, something that we've spoken about is, you know, I was thinking to myself, man, how does she, with everything going on, with all of her activities, raising two kids, how does she keep a clear heart, a clear sense of energy, a clear sense of focus? And the fact that you are doing, excuse me, meditation, yoga, the arts, I kind of want to go back to what you just mentioned, your values, because that's something we've also discussed. And I'm a firm believer in, if you can live and breathe your values, it provides a clarity that nothing else can land. You know, because one thing we also spoke about was how conscious is becoming a muddied term. So let's clear up the mud. Let's talk values and let's give some clarity. So maybe share with us, what are your values?
Well, definitely. I mean, I guess I can hear it in my own story is, you know, what I really value is my own uniqueness and authenticity and all of the potential that I have and the love of life. I just get excited and enthusiastic about what's possible and loving this world while I'm here, you know, and being a good citizen in that world. But there's this incredible sense of I'm here for something.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe we all are. And I wanted that for my daughters. I don't want to get in the way of their development. And I know I do at times. And there's the whole mother-daughter archetypal thing, you know, that never goes away with you know, I'm a parent, but I have a parent. So we're always into those sorts of relationships. That shows up in the workplace, as we all know. We get into the parent-child relationships, or sometimes we do adult to adult, thank goodness. But I'm getting a little bit sidetracked now, I think. But my values really came from, I want to live love. I want to live through my heart. And I think, you know, having children, I was thinking about this just the other day. When you have kids, and especially when the second one came along, it's how do I find more love, you know, and how do I continue to love my husband? How do I love my first child and that she knows she's just as loved as the second one, or the second one knows she's just as loved as the first? And it's not possible to not expand love. And I realized, you know, in just doing some inner work myself recently, particularly through all of these challenges with COVID, that the whole giving of yourself, the giving of potential, expanding into more, you just find more and more capacity for that.
It's amazing.
So values for me are about love of learning, love, spirituality, especially appreciation of beauty and excellence. Absolutely. The self-mastery for me is really strong. And the other one for me is very much about perspective. I love to have my own perspective shifted, which is why I love doing this kind of thing with you, Anil. And I also love being able to help others shift their perspective into that place where essentially you're in flow, grace is able to flow through you. Life becomes more elegant and beautiful as a result, but make that choice. And so having a still mind for me is so, so vital, because I will lose my connection with that deep, resourceful, powerful self if I'm letting my mind be influenced by everybody else's thinking, the collective thinking. And COVID is a fantastic opportunity for that, because we can see so clearly where there's media messages, government messages, your family's messages, the fear mongering, the how to do this in a way that doesn't have us lost from our real selves and what we could be creating out of this.
Mm-hmm.
So a still mind and a really connected heart is the opportunity to say, well, this isn't what we want, actually. What will we have instead? And that's when your leadership kicks in. You can't fall into the pain and the wound of a disaster, even though that's really difficult. I'm not saying that glibly at all, because I absolutely know what I've had to do to work on that. But we have always the choice. There is a point of choice, and that's a still moment. And I think that is the fulcrum. That is when we connect in with our hearts and the heart can speak.
It's interesting to me because a still mind is absolutely powerful. I feel like, I train, I run, I cycle, I lift weights, and I think, ooh, that's a great way for me to have a still mind. But I disagree. I think it's a great way to kind of exert energy. But at the same time, my mind may not be as still as I'd like it to be. To your point, there's so many things hitting us during COVID, post-COVID, whether it be, like I said, media messages, political messages, love, hate, anger, rage. There's so much. And we do need to take that moment to step back and almost, again, be attuned to our consciousness. Because if we're going to be a leader, whether it's a leader as a mom of 2 kids or a leader of a team or of an organization, you have to have that still mind. And those values that you mentioned, I love how you said that, having to find more love. And there it was, it's not like you had to, go out somewhere and tap into it. You found it within you. I want to go though briefly but what also sticks with me is when you say, and a wise heart, tell me what you mean by a wise heart. Because people would think, wait, a heart, that's emotion. That's not wisdom. Wisdom comes from the mind. Tell me a little bit more about a wise heart.
Well, I mean, we know through neuroscience about the 2 hemispheres of the brain. Let's start there.
Yeah.
So the left side of the brain is logic, rationality, tick off the list, data, analytical, but it's not that smart because it can't actually pull things into perspective. The right side of the brain does that, and that's the very creative, spatial, more super aware, I guess. And if we bring the 2 together, and I love doing practices, fun things where we can do that, is when you integrate both sides, it's brilliant because you've got all of that analytical ability. But I think what we've been taught, certainly from early 20th century education, is that it's the left side of the brain that we need to trust. So we were taught factual things. We were taught geography and history and maths very spatial too, though, really. But it was learn this pot of stuff, get 10 out of 10 for it, or an A+, and life will be good. But it didn't show us how to apply that in life or true life skills, and didn't necessarily honor creativity and art and expression and things like that. They're always the icing on the cake kind of things. And society still continues to value art, but in lesser ways. You're usually long dead before you're famous and your art's making a lot of money.
Yeah, agree.
It doesn't happen while you're painting it so much, or for authors as well. There's some wealthy writers, but most are struggling along, I would say. You know, you don't really live off a book. So it's society's values that we also can get caught in. So for me, the wise heart comes in as another aspect of who we are. I mean, for me, actually, I've come up with this thing since we spoke called the three voices. And what I was noticing about myself was that I have thoughts, and we know that we actually think about 500 words a minute. So if you want to follow your thoughts, that's madness making, because you cannot engage with 500 words a minute of this stuff. So the mind just does what it does. It thinks, it just wanders, it's mind wandering. And apparently we mind wander at least 50% of the time. And even when we're focused on something, we're still mind wandering about 40% of that time. So it's a natural thing for the mind to do, the brain to do at least. The mind gets into beliefs. And so you've got all the voices that go with thinking. And then you've got the voice of beliefs. Oh, I shouldn't do that. That's the wrong thing to do. That's not who I am. You know, I really need to be, you know, this is what will make me great. All the things that go on, and beliefs are really just the same thought over and over until it gets cemented into a neural pathway. So we have to work on beliefs. But if we don't have an ability to step back from those beliefs, we're not going to have the ability to question them. We don't realize we're getting caught in our life is being driven by those beliefs. But then there's the voice of what I call, and in yoga we call the self with a capital S, which is the wise advocate, as actually Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz in his book, You Are Not Your Brain, he talks about this as the wise advocate. So there's another part of us that we access through meditation and through stillness that is the unconditional one who knows you are already great, never questions whether you're worth the greatness or not. It just knows you are. It wouldn't even ask the question of, am I worthy? You know, so much goes on about, oh, I don't love myself enough. That's a belief. I don't love myself enough. Otherwise things would be better. Or, oh, that's not me. I couldn't be that great. You know, that's for somebody else. Or I'm not worthy enough. That the self wouldn't ask those questions, because it just is, it knows you are perfect as you are with all your imperfections and totally worthy. So I've been writing a list in a table of these three voices. What would the self say? And it is the wise advocate. It is the one that's telling you, if you go down that path, it might not be a good thing for you. Or you're holding yourself back. You could be doing, you can have this, you can have this. Or it's got, you know, grace and beauty and all of those incredible qualities that are the virtues that we all know, compassion and honesty and truth and peace and all those amazing things that we all aspire to. So I believe in it enough because of the experiences I've put myself through and have had, particularly through meditation and living a life of basically yogic practices, that have shown me that they are the truth. And it's a choice. I can choose to be poor, I can choose to be wealthy, I can choose to be uncaring, or I can choose to be caring, I can choose to be unhappy, or I can choose to be happy. Like, I have a choice. But actually those really positive things are birthrights. They're already innate within me. So how do I get to that, and how do I remind myself, is I have to listen to that third voice that's saying, if you just shut up for a minute, I will show you. And it keeps, and the thing I realized is that, you know, people talk about getting an aha in the shower, right?
Mm-hmm. If I'm not seeing in the shower, I definitely hope for the aha in the shower.
Yeah.
Or actually, I have my aha moments when I'm on a run.
Okay, so
Quite
you're
enough.
on a run, and you're focused more on how am I feeling in my body, where am I?
Yep.
You will be going into something where your brain waves are dropping,
Exactly.
and your mind is starting to focus in on one pointedness, which is all meditation is. So that focus comes down into, and then your higher self, your wise self, can start to give you it's more likely to give you a feeling or a knowing or a vision, or even perhaps some words that mean something to you, and you're going to wake up. It's like the light bulb just went on, and you think, oh, that's an aha. It's not that, and it's not that we can necessarily manufacture them, but it's not that they're not there. They're just trying to get through.
Through all the traffic and the noise. So I just
Yes.
want to make sure. So the three voices are, so I've captured it, and maybe catch me if I'm wrong. The voice of belief,
Yeah.
the voice of self,
Yeah.
and what's the third voice?
Thinking, thoughts, just thoughts. So it
Thought.
starts with thoughts. The first layer is thoughts. Like,
First layer is thoughts.
yeah,
Yep.
just press play on the tape. Like set it off. And I have an amazing yoga meditation experience that showed me that actually. So it's just like press play,
Let the
off it
thoughts go.
goes. Yeah, let it go. It will go wherever it wants. And the unfortunate thing is we start to get caught in those thoughts and follow them, and they just take us down the rabbit hole.
And that's the 500 words a minute that we're
Yeah,
kind of trying to process or make sense of.
yeah.
And then the second one is the voice of belief,
Beliefs, yes.
which I love, because I was listening to another cast by Mr. Maxwell last week on a run, and he says a crisis will test beliefs, and after a crisis, beliefs become conviction. And so it's interesting how, as you
Wow.
rightly said, like, you almost want to make sure you kind of like what those beliefs are and how they are tried and tested,
Yeah,
right or wrong, before you actually go, yep, this is exactly who I am and what makes me me, which
yeah,
then leads to that third voice of self. I love that. I think that's because I always think of saboteurs. Like, I'm someone who has struggled in the last couple of years sabotaging myself in my mind, whether it be with a relationship, whether it be at work, validating, pleasing, trying to get recognition. And I
mhm.
feel like if you just listen to yourself, it brings you back to your value of authenticity, who you really are and who you want to become, or yeah, who you are and who you want to become.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, it hooks you back into. I was just thinking, this is what happens in coaching, and why I love coaching, and I am an executive coach too, as you know. And it's how I work to help people access these parts of themselves and allow them to develop. Because it's not that they're not there; we've just forgotten about them. We forget who we are really. And in coaching, and if you know Anthony Robbins's work too, and with so much around empowerment, is he's huge on questioning beliefs and asking powerful questions. Essentially, it's okay, so you believe that. His question would be, how's that working for you? You've got to stop and say, well, okay, I'm running a belief here at the moment, but is it working for me? And if it isn't, what's the belief I need to replace it with in order for that to allow me to be who I want to be and have what I want to have, give what I want to give, whatever. So that's where the conscious leadership comes into it for me. In terms of, you asked me earlier, how do you apply that in your life? It comes in through the coaching, because if I totally believe that we have a voice within us that is really omnipresent, omniscient, and all powerful, then I just need to help that come through and ultimately live that, rather than all the other stuff that is keeping me from what I truly am here to do and be, and growth at a much deeper, at a deeper level. And also just to feel self-sufficient, self-reliant. This is a very lonely time for many people, including myself. And my own daughters, one lives on her own, the other's with a partner, but we've been talking a lot about this, as in, these are the times when we all need to be very comfortable with being on our own. And whilst we're a herd, you know, we are a community kind of being, and I miss people for sure. It's not, and I love connecting. I thank goodness we're doing this.
Exactly.
I need this, you know.
I need to speak to somebody, all these ideas, and want to
Yeah.
share it.
But one of the things I raised my girls with was that I appreciate about the way I was raised is learn how to entertain yourself, learn how to do something worthwhile for yourself, learn how to be with yourself. If you can't be with yourself, you're going to be running out to buy stuff, to go eat somewhere, to where's the next person, where's the next thing that will keep me away from myself. And so loving the company of myself when I was little and fostering that, now I am so grateful for, because I can be on my own.
I have to jump in on that one. I had a conversation with a very close friend of mine, pre-COVID, pre-lockdown, and before I even got into a relationship. And she said, Anil, you know, you keep yourself constantly busy, going from activity to activity, meeting to meeting, personal, professional. You know, when was the last time you just spent time with yourself? I'm like, oh, last night, you know, I watched a movie, ordered in dinner. And she's like, no, like really with yourself, with your thoughts, like everything that's going on. And, you know, I am someone who's guilty of, you know, you almost, hey, nothing wrong with watching a night of TV, but you almost use it as a means to kind of, just to kind of blanket, just to kind of switch the noise off, when actually you do need to not distract yourself with something that's a bit, you know, like TV, but something that allows you to almost understand your thoughts. And I feel personally during lockdown, you know, a lot of things that were happening to people affected them more because, and they had to work through it because they didn't have distractions. Like, oh, I'm just going to go have a beer with a friend at the pub, or I'm going to go for a movie, or I'm going to go, you know, we almost had to, and, you know, you think about if you're with a family member or the family, you know, suddenly that amplifies those thoughts, those things going on in your brain. So I wholeheartedly, I just want to say, I completely agree. Learning how to spend almost quality time with yourself and your thoughts is powerful. And I think COVID and this lockdown has really tested that for a lot of people, for better or for worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding what did work. Like a lot of people jumped into learning, right? They used this time. I've done a lot of contemplating and journaling around, so what is it I've been watching? What are those urges that are coming through? Because I'm not being distracted by all that and having to serve people very intensively, it's been great to watch, well, what is it that I desire? What do I really want? When I'm coaching and I ask someone, what are the goals you want to set for yourself? What do you want? The number of times people cannot tell me what they want. They have totally lost touch with what they truly desire and what they feel they're being encouraged to offer and become. And, you know, or you look at a performance review, let's get into applied at work through conscious leadership. And I want to make a point about the loneliness of leadership as well out of this.
Yes.
Is that, you know, look, when I'm working in learning and development, for instance, which I do, and strategies for, you know, learning on the job and those sorts of things, then I will look at someone's performance review and it'll say, oh, their development is course, you know, let's send them on a course. Well, and a course to do what? A course for what? How is that going to help them develop for the business? But also, how is that going to help their career progression and who they want to become? So this sense of I have the right to be all I can be comes into my work with, I want to help you trigger the rights and realize the rights for you to be all you can be. And work is an amazing conduit and place for that to happen. Mm-hmm. So, and I think employers they realize, and many do now, of course, or they wouldn't do L&D, is that's their job as well. You know, there's an amazing opportunity for the business when you allow someone to bring their very best of themselves to work in a way that doesn't feel like, oh, I'm asking too much, or I'm being this, but I really want to be that, and feeling split down the middle. Or as someone said to me once, I walk in the door and I'm a walking head. I cut myself off at the head. My body has gone. Like, how can anyone live like that? So, that ability to be in touch and be aware has authentic. If you want that to be authentic, not what advertising shows you or what your best friend shows you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you look at Yale University's course on the science of well-being, which is really about how to be happy, they talk about the stats on, someone might win. I think an example was someone won the lottery, went out and bought an amazing car, and the chances of the neighbor then going and buying a new car, so our reference points are based on what other people are doing, thinking, oh, well, I want that now. And that's ego driven. That's belief system driven. It's not is that the best for me? Is this the best for all concerned? Is this the best for me in the future? Like, really looking at what drove me to choose that.
And that's why I love going back to the values, because I think, it's funny, whenever I open up Instagram, well, in the last couple of months, it's been less so because not many people are traveling. But when you open up Facebook or Instagram and you see where people are, or what they're doing, you're almost like, well, I want to be there. Well, ooh, I want that too. And it's sort of like, it starts to shift. Well, but what do you value? Do you value that, or do you value something else? Because you don't want to compare yourself. And that's something as a kid growing up, and I've shared this with the group, I compared myself religiously, and it's almost like something to a fault, where you start to lose yourself. What career, what job do you want next? What car do you want next? What girlfriend or boyfriend do you want next? Like it becomes you lose you.
Yeah.
And especially at work, and back to your point, it's conscious leadership. You want to be a leader who's true to yourself, who's driving what feels right from what you know and you feel and what you believe, rather than being pulled by ebb and flow, what's happening around you, or by what someone else is telling you, because you'll be found out. I genuinely believe that if you don't really listen to yourself, someone's going to call you out as, that's not really what you believe. You're doing that because someone else told you to do it. Or you did that because somebody else did that. Is that really what you want? And man, that can also put you on the back foot.
Oh, absolutely. And in times of challenge, when you actually have to take into account what's best for the business, what's best for many, if you're not really strongly grounded and rooted in your own principles, and those that comes from values. And for me, I talk about and really do see it as, the values are the heart speaking. I think values are like the first door open to the external world, to allow that to happen, to live what your heart desires.
That wise heart.
That's the wise heart.
Yeah.
So we got there in the end, Anil, but that's the wise heart, because it's filtering everything through the values for yourself. And my values are not your values, and they might be on the list, but in terms of the top of the list, and I do values work with teams because of this, it's, well, what are your values? And as a team, what do the values need to be? And how will you help these individuals also work with the values that aren't shared by the team? Because it doesn't make those values wrong. So how will you incorporate those as well?
That's powerful.
Allow for individuality. So diversity and inclusion, it comes into all of, should be embracing, there's a should, that's a belief, it could be embracing those differences right at the values level, to say, how will we also foster those in you? Because actually, in the end, those values are pretty much non-negotiable. We can move them around in priority order, and life will ask us to do that. Probably for me, family will always be very high. My daughters will be very high on the values list, and the quality of life for us as a tribe, as a family, and what I want around legacy and all, because ultimately it's, who are we, and what are the values we share together that make us us. That's really important. But they need me less, in terms of they make their own great money and they have their own great professions, and so they can slide slightly down on the priority list for where I need to be focused right now, and that's really more about me and my future and what how I could be giving more to others because I don't have to split so much of my time into giving to them. I love them as much and endlessly, but that's just about task and time, right?
No, it's true. But I think it's important because, again, looking after yourself, listening to yourself, your thoughts, your beliefs, what you feel you need to do and how you need to do it, driven by your values, you're then in a better position to then guide your daughters or your team or your company to in a clear way in the right direction so that come hell or high heaven, like you will manage and push through it, and you'll come out on the other end better for it,
Yeah.
again, personally or professionally. And I absolutely love that, because I excuse me, I think values won't always be shared, because whether that be at home or whether that be at work, and I think it's important to at least share your
Yeah.
values with the people you work with or with your loved ones, because that way they'll understand you better, and they'll actually, in my opinion, they'll either call you out if you're, again, faking it, or if you're really making it.
Yeah.
That's something that we've got so much that I want to talk about, but there's one thing that I kind of want to bring us to a close on.
Okay. Oh gosh,
And
we're that point already.
I know time's flying, but I just want you to know we're going to be having more conversations like this, because
Okay.
the conversation around ritual versus habit and your
Yeah.
8 elements, we're coming back. There's much more to discuss in much more detail, but there's one thing that I want to bring us to a close on, and that's when I was looking on your site, and we've talked in the past, one of the things that I read and I love is effective action
Mm-hmm.
is always your goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of curious, just as we bring this to a close, I'm going to recap a few of the thoughts that I've pulled together. But what would you want? What are the 1, 2, or 3 things you want people to take away from this so that they can reflect and grow and drive an effective action to achieve their personal or professional goal?
Well, I have to speak from my own experience, but also the experience of working with many, thousands of people now in my life, I suppose, and listen, and I do listen and I learn from others. So I'm saying this with, in a humble way as well, is that an effective action is question your thoughts, be much more self-aware of what's going on in your head, and know which thoughts are going to drop your happiness levels and which are going to elevate them, because happiness is a birthright. It's not acquired or one day we'll get there. Happiness needs to be uncovered. It is our innate nature. So what's your default mood? Work towards what's your default mood that you want. What do you want to feel as your general mood through the day? And to do that is, and I know we haven't talked about ritual much, but start to find the practices. Is it giving yourself meditation time? Is it asking yourself a question at the end of the day and really contemplating it, journaling about it? Looking at what are you grateful for that day? That's a big thing now, 5 things you're grateful for, but that's actually extremely valuable to do that. I think we talked the other day about 3 things that I've just noticed on my own notebook. Is 3 steps for me is have right understanding, set up the right rituals for yourself, and get the right support. And that means supporting yourself. How do you support yourself when nobody else is there to do it? Loneliness of the long distance runner. And who do you have support you that's going to help you succeed and celebrate with you? So right understanding, what are you telling yourself? And is that working for you? So what do you need to tell yourself instead? we can be totally creative here. We've got a big choice, like there's no right or wrong with it. Just do what works for you.
Yeah.
And then create rituals around that support it so it becomes automatic and a natural habit that this is who you are. And then get the right support for yourself to do that. And sometimes all that is listen to a YouTube on someone talking about that, or write something about it, or just imagine that you're already there. The right support for you might be, I've got a kid's sketchbook, and I'll get the pens out and I'll just draw instead what it is that I'm thinking I would like for myself. So any way that you can stay close to, and ultimately, of course, listen to that wise heart that we've all got it. It's all there. It's just sitting there. It hasn't gone anywhere. That's my biggest learning. It's not something that, again, that I acquire from outside somewhere or bring down from the heavens. It's within me. So just let it be there. It's beautiful.
May I have to say you're an incredibly beautiful person, an incredibly beautiful soul, and I'm it's one of those where you don't want the conversation. You're like, look, I've got to go, but I really want to keep this going. I love that because I feel we can have a conversation alone just on what you just said about the 3 steps. The right understanding, the right rituals, and the right support. In fact, just to give a bit of a teaser to folks who are listening, we had a little bit of a debate and discussion around the difference between a habit and a ritual.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that people may take for granted. I personally like to say, hey, maybe a ritual eventually becomes a habit, or a habit eventually becomes a ritual. But I think we need to delve in that some more. But I want us to do that justice. There are a couple of things I took away from our conversation today that I'm going to be mindful of. Number one, learn how to love and live with yourself. Because if you're not able to do that, you're not going to be able to find those untapped reserves of love or authenticity that you want to share with your family, your friends, or your colleagues at work. And especially during tough times like we're going through now, all that noise, those messages that are around us, it's incredibly important that we really learn to live and listen. And the second thing I'm taking away is, I love this, is those 3 voices, thoughts, beliefs, and self, and I'm sticking more to the end to that, be true to yourself. Yeah. Because if you're not, you're going to sabotage yourself. There's going to be that other voice that's going to go, oh, no, you shouldn't do it that way. Grenade in your brain, and it goes off, and suddenly you're spiraling and you lose control. How do you find that stillness? How do you live with that wise heart? And the third is, clearing your conscious. Because I think, going back to, we were talking, guys, quite openly, what do we title this conversation? Because this is the longest chat I've had with someone, the longest podcast. And we said, it's going to be growth through conscious leadership. And the word conscious has become muddied. And that's why I wanted to spend time today with you, Indira, and with the group. Hey, how do we clear up that muddiness? How do we help people reconnect with their self? Because something that we chatted about too was, the more that you grow internal and you focus on internal development, the more what you project externally becomes far more powerful. And, Indira has been on this journey for 30 plus years, and I've been honored to be put in touch with her and to have had these conversations. And I think she can help you. I'm a firm believer in coaching. I'm a firm believer in someone who can help you break through walls, break through inner, external walls, personal, professional walls, spiritual, mental, physical barriers. And Indira is someone that I highly encourage you all to look up and get in touch with if you can. I'm going to share her website, consciousleader.com.au, on my podcast link, so you guys can find it. And Indira, I just want to say thank you. Any final words for the group before we break and we reconvene, I'm sure, in the next few weeks for more. I love this.
I'd love to do that.
Again, I don't want to end it, but any final thoughts from your side?
Well, final thoughts really is, practical thing is, I'm London based. So even though the website is .au, I am London based and can work globally, obviously, through Zoom these wonderful days. But also, you're just talking about being really happy with yourself, loving and being comfortable with yourself. And the thing about being conscious is, the more that you do that, the more you listen to the voice of the self, the more aware, the more you will see when you are not in that space. So being conscious of your thoughts, conscious of your beliefs, comes from that deep witness within you, that observer within you that can say, oh, I just felt this way. I'm not sure I like that. Oh, I just thought that. I'm not sure I like that. I want to choose something else. That is your wise heart speaking to you. So in terms of recognizing when it's happening, the moment that you can say, oh, I'm not sure I want to think that, or I could be doing this better, or as an athlete, you know, where you know you could improve, or what state am I really in right now? What's my energy doing? As soon as you are in that, you are in that wise self. So just also learning to be more aware. It's there, it keeps working with you. We just haven't been taught enough how to recognize it and work with it. And as a leader, when you have to do this and you want people to go with you, they have to trust you. And the only way they will do that is when they see you trust yourself. So that's the core for me, is we build self-trust and we build trust from others when we go into that. That's the conscious leader part. So we're working with consciousness, but we can have a whole other conversation around the levels of consciousness, you know.
We need to, because I think that's something that, again, if consciousness or conscious is muddied, I think to break it down layer by layer and let people understand the different layers is really important. You know, one final thought I'll leave you all with, and it's a thought I got from The Art of Happiness, and I think it just links well with what you just said. You know, if your motivation is genuine, you can't go wrong. But that motivation and that genuine sense comes from, like you said, really knowing and reflecting and understanding who you are and what you want to be. And I love that. I think it's powerful. So Indira, thank you again so much for the time. I look forward to getting you back and yeah, pick one of many topics that we can delve into for the group.
Thanks, Anil. And I just want to say the very fact that you're doing this and who I'm learning you are is a real demonstration of that journey we all go on, and we will never be off really until we pass over, but that you are connecting what you're questioning all the time, and you're questioning from that loving space. And that's really all we can do. If we're taking our, using our intellect for that, then, and we're making adjustments to our life through that, we're doing a great thing. So for me, you're a great demonstration of conscious leadership in action, self-leadership in action.
Oh, truly humbled. No, genuinely. And Indira, you know, we've got a mutual friend that we can thank for getting us in touch to kind of nurture our friendship and nurture our beliefs and understaniings. He knows who he is.
We will do that.
Indeed. We'll let him know separately. But thank you. Very kind words.
Thanks again.
I love ending this with lots of love and big hugs to everyone. So take care and speak to you all soon.
Bye.
Ciao for now, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.